Hello gamers, I'm 30 and today I'll be teaching you how to color hair on Clip Studio Paint. Before we get started, I'ma just tell you guys what brushes and colors I'll be using. For brushes, I just use this ice cream brush on screen as well as the Real G Pen and soft air brush. The ice cream brush can be found in Clip Studio assets, which I'll link in the description below. The Real G Pen and soft air brush are default brushes in Clip Studio, and here are the accurate colors I use for the drawing. Feel free to screenshot and use them for yourself. They're probably going to be a bit different from the colors on this video screen itself. Okay, let's get started. I'll be using my boy Sanlang as my example. First, get the line art and set your hue to your desired base color. Now, there are two ways to fill the base color quickly. First is using the ice cream brush I mentioned earlier in the video. To use it, just circle your brush around the area you want to fill in, and let your pen go once you're done. The brush will automatically fill in any area with closed off line art, which makes it extremely useful for coloring in huge areas quickly. The second is using the selection tool, which is the default tool in Clip Studio. Make sure to use the refer to all layers tool over there and click on the area you want to fill in with your base color. Click the bucket to fill it, then the thing on the far left to deselect. When you're done, personally I recommend the ice cream brush since the select tool does leave blank pixels at the end of the hair strands, which you have to manually fill in later. Before adding the shadow, make sure to lock the base color layer by pressing this button. This is to make sure random brush strokes never go outside your desired coloring area no matter what. Now it's time to add the first shadow. First, I determine where the light source is. In this case, it's the top left. I then use the Real G Pen to add the hard shadows. If I'm in a huge rush, I just use the ice cream brush for shading since it fills really quickly. I make sure the shadows are more frequent at the bottom right since that's the direction opposite of the light source. As I get further right, the shadows become more frequent. As you can see, the back of Sanlang's hair has a lot more shadow. The way I structure shadow shapes are a mix of hard and soft edges. Most of the time I just use random shapes that look good together. It's the second shadow time because I want more detail. As you can see, some areas have a lot of shadow and it looks kind of boring. We can add another darker shadow to make it look cooler. Once again, use the Real G Pen to add the shadows. The shadows should be more frequent at the bottom right, because that's the place furthest away from the light source. You can also add the second shadow in places that are close to the light source, so those shadows don't look too boring. Now it's time to add the highlights. First, I get a color that's extremely similar to the base color, but only slightly lighter. Then add oval things around areas that only have the base color. They should get bigger as they get closer to the light source. They should also form a ring in the part I highlighted since that's where most anime hair highlights go. Now the second highlight. Get a color that's lighter than the first highlight, but not too much lighter. But just use either the ice cream brush or the Real G Pen and make this curved H-like shape around certain hair segments. They should fit inside all the oval shapes. Just like the previous highlight, it should be largest near the light source and it gets smaller as it gets further. The final highlight is just lighter than all the other shade. The shape is largest nearest to the light source and it just gets smaller as it gets further. Just make these dot shapes that vary in size around like the top ring of the hair. Also, use the same color to add some highlight streaks at the edges of the hair. Now it's time for the final touches. First, go to the line art layer with the hair file on it. In my file, I put the hair line art on a separate layer from every other line art. Get a color that's darker than the second shadow, then color the hair in that color. Because Sanlang's hair is all black, I don't need to change his line art color. However, for someone like my OC Ezra, I do. Notice how his line art is a mid-brown instead of black. To pull this off, make a new layer. Press this button to create a clipping mask, then use the bucket tool to fill in the entire layer. If your line art is all on one layer, lock the line art layer, then color the hair line art manually. Unfortunately, I don't know how to make it faster if the line art is all in one layer. Next, I grab the skin color, and I finally make use of the soft airbrush tool. I make the size large, and I color the areas near the skin. This is so that the hair slightly blends in with the skin. When I feel extra fancy, I also take the eye color and I blend the area near the eyes, and so the eyes look slightly glowing. Finally, I grab a dark desaturated purple, and I use the airbrush to create a gradient along the shadows. To keep the airbrush within the shadows, I often select all shadows at once using the selection tool in order to keep the gradient contained. After the gradient has been made, I take a lighter desaturated blue color and I trace along outer areas of the line art where the shadow is. I never put the blue color along areas that are touching the base color or in the highlight. And this is how I color hair. Let me know in the comments below for any future tutorials you'd like me to cover. I hope I helped you wannabe artists out here, and like and subscribe if you want more crappy art tutorials or some MXTX content. Thank you for watching, gamers.